of there are a number of ways that we could address that. There, like I said, there'd be the Trump administration was challenged uh, on the asylum, claiming asylum outside of a port of entry. Uh, that seems to me to be a perfunctory affair. If you're not coming through the border, a border crossing, you shouldn't be able to claim asylum. And it clearly, the only people benefiting from all of this are the Mexican smuggling cartels. So we are actually keeping those guys in business. And those cartels are so intertwined with government in Mexico. There are so many people there are so many corrupt officials in Mexico that thrive on drug and human trafficking. That I don't see how it's an insoluble issue. You need someone on the other side who's willing to help. So back to the 5% tariff, that will probably get someone's attention because that will affect everyone in Mexico, including the cartels.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's going to be something that needs to be done, but I really don't buy like that. So much of it is political. Like we have these like asylum laws that have been in place for a long time, and like they are there for a reason. They're being challenged successfully, I think, for a reason. I mean, we'll see how it goes with the Supreme Court, but that's going to be definitely. I think it's definitely going to be something to watch. All right, we are going to, since we're almost like 30 minutes in now, we're going to turn tides a little bit to the 2020 race and Elizabeth Warren. She's kind of garnered a little bit of a reputation as really being policy heavy and kind of wonky, which is, I mean, perfectly fine reputation by me to have. But perhaps no idea she's had is more simple or really obvious or really kind of interesting in its own way than reversing the Department of Justice policy saying that a sitting president can't be indicted. And I think it kind of surprised me because really no matter that this was a thing when we went through this whole Mueller thing, because in a Medium post yesterday, Warren argued the DOJ policy, which was the first used during Watergate, and later backed up during the waning days of the Clinton administration in a memo from a former assistant attorney general. She said it was deeply flawed and needs to be changed, saying, quote, "Yes, Congress has a constitutional obligation to impeach the president when he violates the law, but lawyers for previous presidents have used this constitutional duty to argue the only way the president can be held accountable for criminal behavior is through impeachment. This argument hasn't always been accepted by the federal government, and it's been criticized by scores of constitutional experts, but is still the official policy of the Department of Justice." I mean, I'm not saying we have to like drag Trump or any other president that gets accused of crime out by handcuffs, but the fact that you can't accuse him of a crime and make it clear enough for Congress to decide whether you can impeach the president or not, like, it's kind of ridiculous. And this is not necessarily just for Trump, but I think it's really for just presidents and all, because we're going to have probably corrupt presidents in the future, like people who do bad things, and I think we should be able to know like whether they've done it or not, and kind of not get this like vague in-betweenness from Mueller because of like, the Justice Department guidelines. Like, Congress needs to get, I think, a clear yes or no, and really one of the best ways you can do that is through an indictment.
Well, Mueller could easily have said, we can't indict him, but we would because we have enough evidence. He never, ever said that. I mean, I don't even understand the point of that entire debacle. It took 2 years. Basically, what Mueller did was take 2 years to then abdicate his only role. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Your job is to either say there's enough evidence to indict, even if we can't, or there isn't enough. And it seems to me like he wanted to say both, which means he said nothing.
Yeah, especially in the obstruction charge, and this is really something I think that confuses a lot of people, like on the left and on the right, like just like come to a clear conclusion.
Exactly, that was his job. You had one job, Robert Mueller. Let's clarify this for us, and he didn't do it. What a disservice. I have no idea why that he disturbed everybody. So now we still have this spectacle occurring that we were going to try to avoid. Um, I just, this is your government at work.
I don't like this is just something that need to be resolved. It just was not resolved.
No, exactly. I mean, he was the only guy who, and everyone on the left put such incredible faith in Mueller. Whatever comes out of his chimney is going to be the thing we'll go with. And so what came out of the chimney? Nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, he doesn't even want to testify or anything like that. Which is really
good luck. Good luck on that. You think he's not going to get subpoenaed? Please.
Yeah, I think it'll get to a point. Yeah, I do agree. That'll be interesting. And yeah, I think Warren's idea is to push for congressional remedies to clarify that sitting presidents can be indicted, and in the meantime, appoint Justice Department officials who could both reverse the president on indicting a sitting precedent on indicting a sitting president, and be willing to make this call should the time come. Yeah, so I mean, that is really changing the statutes could be very important because a sitting Republican president could just come in and reverse this. But I think, honestly, like if you have a president, like you should be able to, like just on its face, it just looks like the president is above the law. Like it's just if you look at the rules here, like the president, like if you're just scanning through them,
there are reasons for this, though, right? I mean, you could people with a lot of political power can concoct a charge against the sitting president. And if you also happen to be the party in power, let's say you're a party in power in the Senate and the House, well, now you've got a president defending a bogus charge. So I can see both sides of this, and for pretty good reason. Then that you can't charge a sitting president, but you can after the fact, right? So it's not like a president would ever be that there's no there are no consequences. They're just delayed consequences. I mean, I understand that, especially now when you're in the heat of a moment, that doesn't seem fair to a lot of people, but I don't know. I can see that side too. Look at how some of the pre-Mueller incidents are shaping up. They look like some of it politically motivated.
If the House and the Senate really wanted to impeach someone over a bogus charge, like couldn't they just impeach it? Like why would they need an indictment?
No, I understand what you're saying. Yes, they could, but an indictment, especially if it's, show me a politician that doesn't tell a lie, right? So lying would be a crime or misdemeanor. If you're lying, or if your political convenience makes someone appear to have lied, that's a whole that you could probably try to rig up an impeachment on that. But we also have massive law enforcement resources that apparently are susceptible to politics. So I don't know that I would be comfortable. Listen, I try to put everything back. I try to imagine everything the same for everyone. And so I try to imagine an Obama administration in this situation, or the Clinton administration in this situation. And I think to myself, I wouldn't want those guys to be charged with a crime because that crime might be rigged up politically. Listen, what did we chase Bill Clinton for? For lying about an affair.
Yeah, it really is like that. Like, there's definitely some political consequences to that, and I doubt, like, you gotta make the right decision, and that's why I think that it's really interesting how Democrats are kind of hedging on this. Like, there's a lot, like, you get Elizabeth Warren saying yes, let's impeach, and then Nancy Pelosi saying no. Like that, like that's very intriguing. Like, I personally am really kind of conflicted on this, because I personally want to say, like, if you don't hold the president accountable for at least investigate him or start this kind of thing, you're just letting him get away with a lot of things that a future president can say, yeah, why not? Let's just, like, that kind of says, like, you're sending a message to the president, like, they could really get away with a lot if the political circumstances are right, in terms of, like, evading subpoenas, in terms of just stonewalling the investigation, and in terms of not being investigated for possibly obstructing justice and investigation. But again, on the other hand, I think, is it worth the possible political consequences that could really come of this? Like, it could, like, there's so many things that could happen. Like, we saw with the Republicans and Bill Clinton, there was like a massive turn on the tide for what was a really bad attempt to impeach. So, like, that could be very troubling, with something that Nancy Pelosi, I really think, should consider carefully. But I really am back and forth on that issue, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, it's, when you think about it, it's not the worst issue in the world. I mean, by and large, it's really nothing compared to some of the other things. I look at these as the shiny objects and the distraction. And we are talking about 2020 politics. So this is a great non-issue issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, because it serves someone as, like, a litmus test for, like, how tough the Democrats want to be on Trump and who wants to come out and make that stance.
Yeah, exactly. I think if the shoe were on the other foot, they wouldn't be so gung-ho on this.
With Republicans versus the Democrats?
Yeah. That's just,
in terms of just jumping towards impeachment?
That's the cynic in me.
Like, if it was the president was Democratic and the House was Democratic, you mean, or?
Yes. If
this was a Democratic party.
If this was a Democratic administration, if this was a Democrat in power, and Mueller had come up with a report against a Democrat, and there were some middle of the road issues that could be construed a number of different ways, you wouldn't see anyone talking about you wouldn't see any Democrats talking about how we have to change the rules.
Yeah, I definitely think there would be the same way for Republicans as well, though. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah, no. We're talking about politics, my friend.
Yeah, people are protecting their own. That's
exactly.
how it's always going to happen. I think it's just really generally in life. But we've kind of been a little bit tough on government today. But let's just see an interesting story. There could be a bipartisan cooperation between two people on what you could probably consider the far right and far left, at least in Congress, where Congress is concerned. AOC and Ted Cruz possibly teaming up. These two both have criticized each other in the past. Yesterday, AOC made quite a splash on Twitter by announcing that she would be willing to work with Ted Cruz on a bill that could permanently ban former members of Congress from registering as lobbyists. So it all started as a kind of response. So AOC saw a tweet from this kind of public advocacy group called Public Citizen, where it was written that nearly 60% of former members of the 115th Congress have taken jobs outside of politics, are now lobbying, or have jobs that influence federal policy, like people who did lobbying jobs such as John Kyle, Tim Murphy, Lynn Jenkins, Charlie Dent, and, funnily enough, Joe Crowley, who has held AOC's old seat. So, yeah, kind of a little bit of a subliminal shot there. So she writes, if you're a member of Congress and leave, you shouldn't be allowed to turn right around and leverage your service for a lobbyist check. I don't think you should be it should be legal at all to become a corporate lobbyist if you serve